Hi, it's Riley with ConcealedCarry.com, and in this video today I'm going to share with you modifications and aftermarket parts that I have put on my VP9L pistols, primarily for competition use, although I have carried a VP9L a number of times concealed as well. Wouldn't necessarily probably carry it with all of these. Well, mostly I probably wouldn't carry it with that. I wouldn't have an issue with carrying it with this on there, but we'll talk about what all these different things are as I go over it in this video. So in full disclosure, I am a sponsored shooter for HK and have been really honored to represent HK in USPSA competition running a VP9L-B model pistol. And the B model is the model that has the push button mag release. And I know the HK purists out there, will say, well, how dare you, you're not a, you're a heathen for not using the paddle release. But I came over from a different platform and wanted it to be as similar as possible to what I was already used to. I wasn't worried about having to retrain. In fact, I've shot, these are the A1 series guns, which have the paddle releases on them. And I demonstrated a number of shooting drills and things in a class I taught just a few weeks ago and did just fine changing mags with these. But it's more that in competition, I want to just hit it with a button with my thumb, just like I've done hundreds, if not thousands of times over the years. So I run the B model guns in competition use. So this is a standard VP9L, at least how it started, but we have made some changes to trigger components, made some changes to the backstrap, obviously the side panels, that's really obvious here, magazines, and also sights, especially in the case of my pistol that's set up for production division competition where it's iron sights only. Let's go ahead and start with the production pistol here, as it's probably the simplest to go over and explain. When I joined Team HK, I was excited to run VP9 pistols in competition. They're not super common in the USPSA competition circuit, and I relished the opportunity to get out there and represent Heckler & Koch in a positive light and show how these pistols can be truly competitive in a very dense market of competition pistols that are used in USPSA. My number one thing with the VP9, as far as like a criticism if I was going to offer that, and I did share this with HK right from the get-go when they asked if I would join their shooting team, I said, there's a couple of things. I wish the grips were a little bit grippier. Now I understand why it's done the way it is for kind of the average consumer market, but definitely, hey, some more texture there would be appreciated. And there's a lot of things we can do there, and I'll talk about that some more. And the other thing was that the pistol is really light. In fact, a standard VP9L without a magazine in it weighs 1 pound, 7.8 ounces. At least that's how this measured without any of the brass components on this gun. So 1 pound, 7.8 ounces, it's what, like 23.8 ounces. It's not a very heavy gun. In a division, well, whether it's production or carry optics or whatever, where a lot of the pistols are 40 plus ounces in weight. And so, not that I can't shoot a pistol that's lighter weight. I've shot Glocks for years and been very effective with them. I've shot a standard P320 for a long time without any serious modifications to it. And I can be very effective with a lighter weight gun. However, I don't think anybody would deny that having something a little bit heavier, especially with high volume shooting, and especially when you're looking for every little edge that you can get. And by the way, I think you should look for every advantage you can get in competition especially, but also in self-defense contexts. Not that we need to go super heavily modified for a defensive gun, but if I need to depend upon a gun for life-saving measures, it's not a bad thing if I have every advantage that I can to be effective in the proverbial gunfight. And so it's a lightweight gun, which, by the way, makes it nice and comfortable for carrying from a weight perspective. But I wanted to look for some ways to add some weight to the gun. And so the first thing that I was able to find right off the bat that was available on the market was a brass backstrap from Taylor Freelance. I don't have one actually currently mounted on this pistol here, but I do have one here on my carry optics gun, and it's colored in black. I think it's a Cerakote. It is brass though, so if it wasn't coated, it'd be the same color as these. in their natural brass form. But this is a brass backstrap from Taylor Freelance. That was the first thing I did to my VP9L pistols, was add that. And I think it comes in about 3, maybe just a little bit over 3 ounces of weight. And the nice thing too is it's got some really great texture to it. And so right off the bat, this was a huge improvement. So we went from 1 pound 7.8 ounces, basically let's just say 1 pound 8 ounces, to about 1 pound 11 ounces. And that, it was noticeable, and I appreciated that, and I appreciated the extra purchase that I could get with that brass backstrap and the texture that's on it. The second thing I did, and I don't currently have it on one of these guns, but I do have it on this gun here, which is the VP9F. Relatively newcomer now. It's the A1 series, but this is one of the VP9 pistol grip inserts, side panels, and I textured this myself. I just got a soldering iron with a tip on it and went to work and stippled this myself, which added some extra grip on the side panel. So the brass backstrap combined with this honestly gave me about all the grip I really needed to be effective, at least how I like it to be with my pistol. So I had this on my competition guns for quite a while as well, and that worked out pretty good. And the nice thing with the way HK does the VP9 and also the P30 pistols is with those replaceable side panels, it really gives you a lot of options. It's actually one of the huge strong points with these guns is that you can customize, everywhere between a small, medium, and large side panel on each side. You can mix and match those however you want, and you can have a small, medium, and large backstrap as well. And with the A1 series, they've even released additional backstraps that give you increased length of pull that you can get there as well. So that's kind of cool to see. I think there's like 54 combinations of backstraps, side panels, whatever that you can make with the grip of VP9 pistol now. So that's where I started, was with going to the brass backstrap, a custom stippled side panel on this side. I didn't care so much about the side that my strong hand was gripping, because it doesn't get that much contact. I mean, it's contacting, but it wasn't as critical that I have a lot of grippiness on this side, but I really wanted it for the support hand on the other side. So we did that. Then I shipped off my pistols to Gray Guns. I'm also a Gray Guns sponsored shooter, and Bruce and his team over there did a fantastic job working over the triggers in my competition guns, reducing the weight of the triggers overall. They went from like about 4.5, 5 pounds or whatever a factory VP9 trigger comes in at, down to a nice consistent about 3.5 pounds or so. Really, really nice trigger weight with the work that Gray Guns did on the triggers. Now at the time they didn't have yet these Gray Guns triggers. These are replaced trigger shoes. These weren't available at that time, so I was still running factory trigger shoes, but just with internal polishing and maybe some work done on some of the springs to get that smoother, cleaner trigger press that I was looking for in the gun. And they did a fabulous job, like I said. It went from, the original trigger wasn't bad, it was certainly serviceable, but just sometimes had a little bit, maybe almost a stacking, but sometimes it was just like a hitchiness in the trigger. It wasn't terrible. It didn't even really bother me. It just was nice to take it to something that was really smooth and really consistent, especially in the take-up. The reset on the Gray Guns improved triggers also improved. I'm not a huge guy about, wanting like the shortest whatever, or even a tactile reset necessarily. I'm typically releasing my trigger finger on the trigger completely from shot to shot to shot, especially at high speed shooting. There's really no need to ride that reset point, but it is nice to have that reset shortened up a little bit, because it just helps ensure, it just reduces the probability of having something like a fail to reset trigger freeze situation. And so that was really nice to get them back from Gray Guns and having the triggers just really phenomenal at that point. There was one other thing that Gray Guns did though, especially for my production guns. I haven't gotten the sight switched over on everything yet to this standard, but on my production guns I did. And the factory sights on the VP9L from the factory, like, they come pretty good. They're serviceable sights. They're good sights. It is a blacked out rear and I think it was like an orange or green or something front sight. But it is like a photoluminescent. It was kind of like a chartreuse color. And they're very visible, but my preferred sight picture when I'm using iron sights is to have a narrower and taller front sight. And I just like how that sight picture appears to me. I'm able to pick it up really well. And I like to have some generous space to either side of that front sight when viewed through the rear notch. When the front sight fills the rear notch a lot, and you'll see some guns with sight pictures that are like that, where you line it on target and you basically just see through the rear notch, the front sight takes up the whole rear notch. That is actually, in my opinion, not the ideal sight picture. Now, everything's going to be personal preference in these kinds of things, but the challenge with that is that it becomes sometimes difficult to really get a sense for where that front sight is in the notch because it fills up so much of it. When you have a little bit more space from side to side, your eye naturally wants to center, like put this bar in between this gap and center it. Like it's very easy to do that intuitively. And so some people might initially, in viewing a really narrow front sight, in a notch and go, wow, that's a lot of gap, and they might feel a little bit uncomfortable initially. But I promise, at speed, it becomes super easy and intuitive to pick that up and recognize very quickly, oh, that's a little bit off to the left or a little bit off to the right as you're shooting or calling shots, and you get a sense of, well, that's a little bit left on target. I need to send a makeup or something like that. But I like a little bit taller profile, narrower front sight. And I believe this is a 0.1 inch wide front sight. I don't remember the exact height specification. And this was available from Dawson. This was a Dawson Precision front sight that I was able to pick up that fit the VP9. But getting a rear sight for it was a little bit challenging because there wasn't a rear sight available that gave me what I was looking for. I wanted it to be a wider rear notch, and I wanted it to be blacked out. I didn't want any other dots or anything like that. And there just wasn't a lot of options that I was finding on the market that I was happy with. And what I did come up with is I learned that the rear sight on a HK P2000 fits the same dovetail. And so I got a P2000 rear sight and stuck it in here, found it was too tall for the application paired with the front sight. I would have liked to have ordered a taller front sight from Dawson, but this was to make it pair up with that rear sight better, but this was the tallest that they had. So I needed to get a lower rear sight, and that wasn't available either. So nice thing was Bruce Gray and his guys over at Gray Guns were able to custom mill or cut down this rear sight for me to make it work with the front sight. And I do hope maybe something in the future that's something that will be available if people want to set up their pistols much the same way like what I'm discussing here with you today, that they can hopefully just get those from Gray Guns. So we'll see if we can make that happen or not. But that's essentially what we did with the production gun initially. Those were the initial changes that were made. The backstrap in brass, my custom stippled side panel, and then the factory trigger shoe, but with Gray Guns worked over internals, and then these sights. But then, at that time, I was still kind of wanting to get something even better for grip purchase and also weight in the gun. And I was like, hey, Taylor Freelance has the brass backstrap. It would be amazing if they could make the side panels also in brass. I reached out to them. This was probably a year and a half ago even, and said, hey, what do you guys think about, do you think this is on the roadmap? Is it possible to do? Are you interested in doing brass side panels for VP9 pistols? And the response that came back was, no, it's not really, we're not interested in really pursuing that, especially at this time. And so I was disappointed to hear that. So then I went back to Gray Guns and I said, hey, Bruce, what do you think about, you got CNC machines, maybe you could make some brass side panels for me with better texture and adding some weight to the pistol. And Bruce was like, let me call Robin Taylor over at Taylor Freelance. I'm like, I already talked to him. And Bruce was like, well, let me give him a call. And the answer came back a few days later that Taylor Freelance is going to start making, or they're going to start working on making these brass side panels, which, by the way, are now available at Taylor Freelance's website. So I'd like to think that I played a small role in bringing this product to being, just because I you know, finagled my way through the back door there essentially to get Taylor Freelance to start making these. And so last, golly, probably 3-4 months ago, Rob and Taylor over there sent me this sample set of brass side panels, and they are fantastic. They are absolutely everything I was hoping they would be. The texture is spot on. It's perfect. I mean, it matches well with the rear back strap. It's aggressive enough to be effective, but not going to tear up your hands or anything like that. And I think the medium-sized ones are about 1 ounce each side. These ones on this pistol are actually the large, and in the up-close shots, you'll be able to see that they're quite a bit fatter than the standard medium ones. I don't know exactly what these weigh. I haven't put them on the scale, but they're a little bit more than 1 ounce, maybe 1.4 ounces or something like that. But they're fantastic. And I love having the little bit fatter side panels here with that texture, not only getting a little bit more weight to the gun, but just really awesome purchase in the hands. It just doesn't move in the hands at all. So really excited about these being available now for VP9s. And then the other thing that became available also a few months ago were these new triggers from Gray Guns. And so I actually have 2 samples here. This is what's called the hybrid that has a slight curve to it. And this is the straight, which is, as it sounds, it is straight. And I like them both. I actually have a hard time really telling, especially under fire at speed, like, it doesn't really matter to me whether I prefer the straight or the hybrid over the other. I kind of, as I'm pressing them more slowly, I like the feel of the hybrid on the fingertip a little bit more, but they're both fantastic triggers. And so I ended up installing these on like Gray Gun sent them to me, and I installed these on my pistols myself. Not always the easiest thing on a VP9 to take everything apart that you got to replace a trigger shoe, but with a little bit of help and watching some videos, it wasn't that difficult and got it done, and they work great. These triggers combined with the other work Gray Guns has done internally has just made these triggers phenomenal. So that is pretty much where it's at with these guns, these competition pistols for these VP9s. Obviously, this is the Carry Optics gun. Now, if you're not already familiar, the optic of choice for me in Carry Optics the last 1.5 years or so has been the Holosun 507 comp, which is a little bit of a departure from what I used for 4 or 5 years prior to that, but I've been really happy with the 507 comp. First of all, I've got 2 of them. They've been incredibly reliable for me. They have just worked. They've got a huge window, and they mount to anything that you can mount an RMR or SRO to. There's plenty of options as far as, you know, adapter plates and whatnot. This is the factory HK adapter plate for an RMR or Holosun. And so that's what I've got on here. I experimented with several of the different reticle choices that are available in the 507 comp. And after mostly spending my time with either just the 8 MOA circle or horseshoe, as some will call it, or the 8 MOA circle with the dot in the center, I ended up just sticking with the 2 MOA dot. Occasionally I do like to maybe go to the 8 MOA circle. If I was doing, like, if I was shooting a match, for instance, it was just very hoser-like, as they like to say, where like all the targets are super open and close, like up in your face, staying near, then probably the 8 MOA circle would be fine. But I found that just as a general use reticle, the single dot has just been my preference. So I would love to see Holosun, by the way, come out with like a pure just 6 MOA or 8, even an 8 MOA just dot version of the 507 comp. I think that would be a huge hit in the competition circles. Now, I didn't tell you that once we got the side panels in brass, the backstrap in brass, the gun now comes in at like, I think it's 1 pound, 13 point something ounces. So basically added about 5.5 ounces total weight between the 2 large side panels and the brass backstrap. Combine that with, this has been available for a while from Taylor Freelance, but I needed some, you know, higher capacity options for shooting in Carry Optics. This is a standard. It's actually a 15-round magazine body. As some of you may know, the VP9s originally came with a 15-round mag. A few years later, they changed a little bit of the design of the base pad and the follower on those and got 17 rounds in them. But this started out as a 15-round mag. And the base pad here is the Border Patrol Special. It's called brass, and it's a +4/5. What I have found, I get it for sure reliable +5, so 17 rounds makes it into 22 round magazine capacity. I'm actually using Graham's followers and springs. And you're welcome to hit me up. If you go to Graham's Engineering's website, at least last time I checked, they don't have followers and spring options for VP9 magazines. And I can tell you which gun these actually are for. They work flawlessly, even though they're not intended to be used with these. So I'm being careful how I talk about that because it's not official or anything. It's just me experimenting with things and finding something that worked so I could run Graham's followers and springs. But 22 +1 capacity now, which is, it's perfectly acceptable for me to be competitive with in carry optics shooting. These magazines, base pads, add just shy of 4 ounces of weight. So now we went basically from a factory gun with a factory magazine that came in at 23 ounces and change to now weighs about 36, 37 ounces all in. Quite a bit extra weight added to the gun, which has improved the shooting characteristics of it. The recoil, all that is just very, very predictable and very manageable, especially in a competition style use. But again, I think I'm sharing some of this too, because those of you that maybe don't even necessarily shoot competitively may find some things that you appreciate more even for a defensive context. The final thing is that the recoil springs I'm actually using inside these are the blue recoil spring, as opposed to the factory red one that came with the guns. The blue is a little bit lighter weight, and that has also improved the recoil characteristics of the guns for me as well. I can't remember now, it's been long enough now. I actually have VP9 matches that I intend to, going forward, shoot more predominantly in production division, meaning that this VP9L will get converted more over to carry optics configuration with an optic on it. That extra ½ inch of the match models, giving me just a little bit more precision with iron sights. And I know the matches for a fact come with the red and the blue recoil spring assemblies. I just don't remember for sure if that's the case on the VP9Ls. I feel like they just come with the red ones. But I put the blue recoil springs in these and was very, very happy. I don't know what they weigh at, and I don't think HK even tells you what they are, the red versus the blue. But the blue combined with typical softer shooting, heavier bullet competition loads, along with the weight upgrades that I've made to this, makes it very, very, I would say, competitive. Like if you're just looking at pure metrics, I can stack this up with other competition guns I've shot in the past and throw down essentially the same performance numbers with this setup, maybe even a little bit better, because I really, really like the shooting characteristics of the VP9L. And it's a very, very accurate gun. It's more accurate than what I was previously using, like by a lot, like noticeably. I can shoot 1 1/4 inch groups pretty easily, just standing freestyle at 25 yards with these if I do my part and don't, yank the trigger. It's too hard. So they're very, very accurate, very consistent, and fantastic performing guns. So there you go. That is a little bit about some things that you can do in the aftermarket, along with some support from companies like Gray Guns and of course Taylor Freelance that's been mentioned, making awesome stuff and doing fantastic work to make these guns just really shine in a performance sort of way. So hope you enjoyed watching. Catch you later.